In this video, we look at simple interest. So interest is money that you have to pay back if you borrow money. So if you borrow $100, you pay back a little bit more than $100. That amount is called interest. Or if you lend money out. So if you're going to lend money to somebody else, they'll pay you back, but with a little bit more. And it gives you an incentive to lend your money out. So there are two types of interest. One is called simple interest. And that's what we're going to look at today. And there's another one called compound interest. So simple interest is interest that is only calculated on the principal. So the principal is the amount of money that you either lend or borrow. So there's a formula here for interest, simple interest. I stands for interest. P is the principal, or the amount invested or borrowed. R is the rate as a decimal, and T is always the time in years. So let's look at how we can use this formula. Here's an example. Question says, calculate how much interest is earned if $2,000 is invested at 4% simple interest for 26 weeks. One of the things I like to do here is just list all the stuff that we're given. So in this case, we want to know what the interest is. So we don't know what the interest is. We are given some information about how much money was invested. That's here at $2,000, so that's our principal. Next up is the rate. So the rate always has to be given as a decimal. So we want to know what the rate is as a decimal. So here's 4% as a decimal. Remember, to change from percent to a decimal, you divide by 100, so 4% is the same as 0.04. And then the last thing here that we need is T, the time. It's for 26 weeks, but don't forget the time here has to be given in years. So 26 weeks is a fraction of a year, and that fraction of a year is 26 out of 52. Or in this case, that happens to work out to 1/2. So we can reduce that fraction if possible. If you can't, then you can just leave it. All right, so we have all the values. We can plug them into the equation. So the interest is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. The principal is 2,000. The rate is 0.04. And the time is 1/2 of a year, or 26 out of 52 weeks you could put in there instead. We can multiply all of that out, and we get 40. So that means that the interest earned is $40. So that's a very quick demonstration of how to use the simple interest formula to calculate interest. Now there's more that we can do here. You saw that there was a part A to this question. Here's part B. How much is the investment worth? So you invest $2,000 today, and then in 26 weeks you get $40 in interest. So your investment is just equal to the principal plus the interest. So I'm going to use A here to represent the amount. That's just equal to the principal plus the interest. And then we can go ahead. We knew that the principal was $2,000. That's what we invested, plus the $40 in interest, for a grand total of $2,040. So we should finish this off. The investment is worth $2,040. So that's an example of a fairly straightforward example. Let's look at a couple of other examples here. So this second example, what principal is needed to have $500 in interest in 2 years invested at 2.5% simple interest? In this case, we're trying to find a different part of the equation. So again, I like to list the information that we're given. We know here that $500 is the interest that we're going to have. So the interest is going to be $500. We also, well, we don't know what the principal is. We were asked to find the principal. We know that the rate is 2.5%. Again, we're going to change that into a decimal by dividing by 100, which works out to 0.025. And we need some information here about the time. So it says it's invested for 2 years. Time has to be measured in years. So that 2 years can just come down here. No partial year here at all. Now we can go ahead and do the calculation. We know that the interest equals the principal times the rate times the time. Plug in all the values that we know. 500 equals P times 0.025 times the time. From here, we can simplify on the right side. There's this little operation here, 2 times 0.025. We can actually do that. That just works out to 0.05. And the 500 doesn't change yet. Now, in this case, we're trying to find P. P is being multiplied by 0.05. To undo that multiplication by 0.05, we do the inverse operation, which is dividing by 0.05. If we do it on the right, we better do it on the left as well. And here we are with a principal of $10,000. $10,000 is needed. So that's an example of calculating the principal. There are lots of a few other examples that we can do where we find some other things. So let's have a look at some of those. Here's our third example. The question here is asking what the rate is. Simple, rate is needed to get $7,000 to grow to $10,000 in 5 years. So again, I'm going to just highlight the pieces of information that we have. So in this case, the $7,000 is our principal. We start with $7,000. We want it to grow to $10,000. That's this part right here. So we want the principal is $7,000. If the principal is $7,000 and it grows to $10,000, the interest must be the difference between those two. So $10,000 minus $7,000, which is equal to $3,000. We don't know the rate, but we do know the time, and the time is 5 years. So again, using that equation for interest, I equals PRT. The interest is $3,000. The principal is $7,000. We don't know the rate, but we know that the time is 5 years. So again, we're just going to solve this equation. We can go ahead and do 7,000 times 5. It's multiplication all on the right side. It doesn't matter what order we do that multiplication in. So 7,000 times 5 here is going to give us 35,000. R is equal to $3,000. So now we have a simple equation. That equation has a variable in it. We're trying to figure out that variable. It's being multiplied by 35,000. To undo that multiplication, we're just going to divide both sides by 35,000. The 35,000 and the 35,000 in the numerator and the denominator here on the right divide each other out. That leaves us with a rate here, and we can go to our calculators and plug in 3,000 divided by 35,000, or realize that we're dividing, we could divide both by 1,000 and just do 3 divided by 35. And we get a rate of 0.086 approximately. So therefore the rate is about 8.6%. And that's because this was an approximate value. Great, so now we've used the formula to find the rate. The only thing left is to find the time. So we'll do a slightly different question. How long would it take? So there's where we're asking for time. How long would it take to grow $2,000 at a simple rate? Sorry, $1,500 to grow to $2,000. So if we're growing from 1,500 to 2,000, interest has to be the difference between those two, which is 500. The principal is what we started with, the 1,500. the rate is 3%. Again, divide that by 100 to get 0.03, and the time we don't know. Plug that into the equation. I equals PRT. 500 is equal to 1500 times the rate times the time. On the right side, we have some multiplication. We can multiply 1500 by, we can multiply 1500 by 0.03 and get 45. Again, 45 is being multiplied by t. We want to undo that multiplication by 45, so we just divide both sides by 45. Plug that into the calculator, and we get that t is equal to about 11.1 years. So we can just say that therefore it takes about 11 years to grow the money. So that's those are the different ways that we can use the simple interest formula to calculate missing values in that equation.